Wednesday against the Toronto Maple Leafs, and there's plenty to dive into in this video. Before we get started, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. It's as easy as clicking in the bottom right-hand corner of this video. Now, before we get started with the season preview for the Montreal Canadiens, the Habs did get some unfortunate injury news before this start of the season, with Patrick Laine expected to miss 2 to 3 months with a knee sprain, and David Reinbacher out 5 to 6 months after undergoing surgery on his knee. So I think there are some negatives right now surrounding the Montreal Canadiens, just bad injury luck. We know what they've gone through over the last 2 or 3 seasons in terms of injuries, and you have to hope that we won't be seeing the same barrage of injuries once again for this team. But it was at least somewhat good news that Laine won't be gone for the whole season. If the Canadiens can manage to stay in the mix until November, late in December, I think that they're going to get Laine back, and it's going to be a big push for this group. So I think there is some optimism in that regard. But at the end of the day, it's going to come down to how you start the season. And I think that's a big talking point right now for this Montreal Canadiens group. If you look at the early season schedule for the Habs, they start with Toronto on home ice on Wednesday. They go to Boston on Thursday night, and then they host the Ottawa Senators on Saturday night. Those are three huge rivals for the Montreal Canadiens and three big Atlantic Division tilts. If you want to get into the postseason, you have to start strong in the NHL. We all know the rule about the Thanksgiving playoff spot and just being in the mix at that time of the year. So I think that's very important for this team. I think a 1-1-1 start over those 3 games would be a success, especially when it comes from what we're looking at with this group. But in terms of the overall expectations, I think people should be focused on the individual development of these players and how they come together as a unit rather than how many points they finish within the standings. Of course, you want to see a jump in points from last season. You want to see them go from 76 to whether it's 85, 88 points this season. I think that's completely realistic. Even in a conference where the only team that you really think of that really isn't in competition right now would be the Columbus Blue Jackets. There's just really not a lot of optimism, especially after the tragedy that surrounded Johnny Gaudreau and that franchise. So I do think that there are some reasons to look at how competitive the East is and how bunched up a lot of these teams are going to be this season. So starting strong is imperative for this Montreal Canadiens team. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how Martin St. Louis starts the lineup now with Patrick Laine on the shelf, whether he decides to split up the top line with Uri Slafkovsky, Nick Suzuki, and Cole Caulfield, and maybe keep Nick and Cole together on the top line, bring up Newhook, and put Slafkovsky on that second line with Kirby Dach. I think we're going to have a better idea of where this team stands early next week when we kind of see how they're practicing, what they're focusing on, and how they're going to continue pushing forward into the season. You do have some guys back in the lineup this season like Kirby Dach. That's going to be a big addition for this group and one that's going to make a huge addition down the middle of the ice. And then you have kind of a wild card in Lane Hutson, someone that can absolutely be a difference maker for this team and someone that can really push this defense to that upper echelon and bring a lot of offense from the back end, especially on the power play, even if that's only on the second unit. I just believe that Hudson's ability to gain the zone and move the puck around is just something that the Canadiens have been missing for a very long time on the back end. So I think that there's only positives in terms of how the youth are going to perform early on. I really expect this team to be competitive. I don't know how competitive just because of how deep the Eastern Conference is right now, but they're going to have to play well early on, and that's going to be a big thing I'll be looking for in terms of what the expectations will be for this season. That's it for me today from Cook's Corner. As always, let me know in the comments section down below what your expectations are for the 2024-2025 Montreal Canadiens and if you think they could potentially sneak into the playoffs. I'm Zach Cook. We'll see you later.